studies show, especially with the younger generations, they're demanding professional growth opportunities. That cuts down on, attrition, which costs a ton of money. So there's a lot of advantage using and leveraging tools like Learnit and Sales Gravy to help invest in their team.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sales Gravy Podcast. I'm Brad Adams, Senior Master Trainer, filling in today for Jeb, who is jet-setting around the world somewhere, delivering keynotes and just general awesomeness to sales professionals everywhere. I'm really excited about speaking with Damon today, today's guest, as I've known him for years. He's played a role as both a customer, a mentor, a friend, and a wonderful referral partner. And today's topic is about leadership, the importance of having or being a good leader, and also how leaders can use training content to support their teams and keep them sharp and empowered to accomplish their roles and tasks. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you to explore the comprehensive training suite that we have available in Sales Gravy University. For the avid listeners of this podcast, I want to offer and personally recommend that you take a free course so that you can see what it's all about. You can get a free course today by going to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com, and be sure and use the promo free course. Now I'd like to introduce Damon Lembi. Damon is the CEO of Learnit, a great company in San Francisco, and he's also the best-selling author of The Learn It All Leader. With 24 years at the helm of a corporate training company that has upskilled over 1.8 million professionals. That's a lot of people, Damon.
A lot of people.
Damon studies how leaders and organizations learn or don't, I love that, and what prepares them to succeed in times of accelerating change. Damon, so glad to have you on the podcast today.
Brad, I'm honored to be here. I've been a big fan of the Sales Gravy podcast for a long time. And as you know, I've been following and leveraging the tools and resources that Jeb and your team's created. So it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
That's why your team's so amazing, right?
It is. It definitely plays a part of it. It's had its impact.
Well, another thing that plays a part of it is your leadership, and I'd like to learn a little bit about your journey. Tell me about becoming the CEO of Learnit and all the joys and challenges that that's been providing you.
Yeah, there's been a lot of both, but no, overall it's great. Learnit, we've been around now for 28 years. It was originally started by my father, who, like a lot of great entrepreneurs, he wanted to learn how to use, back then, how to digitize his real estate portfolio. He had a large real estate portfolio. And so he went and took a class, and this was in the early 90s. And he thought it was boring and stiff, thought there was a better way to do it. So he got curious and came up with a solution for Learnit, which was to have shorter micro classes, 90 minutes, let's say. And I was just finishing up baseball at Arizona State, I should say, college, but baseball at Arizona State. And I thought my career was going to move on and for baseball, and unfortunately it ended. And so I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do now? And so I wasn't sure if my skills were transferable. And so I was really fortunate to have a real estate company to go into, or a hotel chain. But I decided to start from the ground at this new company called Learnit as a receptionist in June of 1995. Can't believe it's been 28 years. And fast forward, I've been from teaching classes to doing sales. I've been the CEO. I did just about every position, and I've been the CEO now for, like you mentioned, 24 years. So it's been a wild ride. I never thought I would get in the corporate learning world, but I love it, and I've learned a lot.
So I'm going to get to your book in a minute, but since you talked about baseball, I want to jump right to the Barry Bonds story, right? In the book, you talked about the advice that you got from Barry Bonds. You personally knew Barry Bonds. You hung out with Barry Bonds. You were there. Tell me about that moment when you were there with him, and maybe some of the advice that Barry Bonds gave you when you were up to the plate.
Well, that's funny, but yes. So in the introduction of my book, the first story I talk about was alumni weekend in early 1990, I think it was 95, 94, and Arizona State baseball. I was hitting third in the lineup. The game was just starting. I was kind of sitting off to the side of the batter's box, and there's a lot of ex-alumni there for Arizona State. Barry and others. And I was watching the pitcher, and I heard this voice that said, "Hey, 20, 20." And I just didn't really pay attention. He's like, "Hey, I'm talking to you." So I turned around, and I look in the crowd, and it's Barry. And I'm like, okay. So I kind of go over to him, and he says, "Watch this pitcher. When he squeezes his glove, it's a fastball." And he said, sure enough, the guy threw a fastball. When he holds it flat, it's a curveball. He's like, "Pay attention to that when you get up to the plate." So Brad, I get up to the plate, and I'm like, I know Barry's watching. I'm a little nervous, anyways. And first pitch, I'm like, squeeze. It's got to be a fastball. Boom, curveball. Next pitch, I thought it was. I thought, here comes another curveball, and it was a fastball. I got it wrong twice. So I said, let's forget that. I can't see things that Barry can. The guy threw me a fastball down the middle. I hit a double in the gap. When I got to second base, I gave Barry two thumbs up, shaking his head like he helped me. And the funny thing is, fast forward to 2008, Barry became really good friends with my father, Walt Lembi, and he didn't remember that, recall that story at all. But I got to travel with him when he went to break the home run record, and I learned a lot. And really, going back to the alumni game story, what it taught me, and for my book, was Barry was he's a student of the game. Here he is watching a college game, and he's dialed in, he's focused, and he's learning. And which is great, is he's not only learning, but he's sharing back with somebody like me, and helping out. And that was just a tremendous experience for me, and it was a lot of fun.
That sounds awesome. I bet Barry was an interesting character, and he was incredible for sure. Regardless of all the vibes, he was an absolutely stud of a baseball player. And I'm an Atlanta Braves fan, as you know, and he terrorized us for years with multiple different uniforms that he had on. So I know that leadership is a passion of yours. And this is your first book, right? Show us the book, by the way. Show us the cover. Show us what it looks like.
Yeah,
The
can you
Learn
see
It
it?
All Leader. Yeah,
The
the
Learn
Learn
It
It All
All
Leader.
Leader.
Mindset traits. Awesome. That's your first book?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Had a lot of
Thank you.
success so far. What was the catalyst to write it?
So really, the main catalyst to write it was that I really enjoy giving back and helping others in the business world, especially. And I've had a unique look into all these organizations, thousands of organizations over the years, about how they lead teams, how they drive motivation and everything. And so I just really wanted to kind of give my unique spin on leadership. I think it's unique. I getting back to baseball, I played for three Hall of Fame Division I baseball coaches, at Pepperdine, a junior college for a year, and then at Arizona State. And really, what I learned from them is what I helped model my leadership style, as well as what I learned from my dad. So learning and me being able to do that, I wanted to be able to give back. The second motivation was I really, my father, who was like my idol, he passed away in 2010. And I have two little kids, as you know, we spoke about this, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I really want them to be able to see how, learn more about their grandfather. And I thought this was a unique way to do it. And not just, all the stuff my dad did, but, my mom and everybody else in my family who's contributed to learn it. Like you mentioned, we've trained about close to 2 million people. So we've touched a lot of lives, and I want them to get to know my father's legacy and learn from his leadership style as well.
Fantastic. What would you say his leadership style is?
Well, his leadership style was, he was super positive, and it was a very outgoing and had a big heart. He trusted everybody, Brad. He gave everybody an opportunity, and he had a big vision. He had moonshot vision. He would shoot for the moon, and even if he landed halfway, it was better than what most people would even give a shot for. And he wasn't somebody to put together a 15-year business plan. He was more like, hey, I got this idea, let's do it. And then get behind his team and try to get it done.
That's how you move mountains. Reviewing your book again, I read it when you first sent it to me, and I was so thrilled that you thought to even conclude me on that first PDF, if you will, before you even sent it to print. But one of the concepts that you mentioned is the concept of go all in. Go all in. What is an all-in approach, and why is that so important to be an effective leader?
First, let me start off by defining what I mean by the term leader.
Okay.
Now, being a leader, Brad, it doesn't mean that you have to manage 100 people, 50 people, even two people. We can all be leaders in our own right. As a individual sales rep, you're a leader. You could be a leader on your team. Of course, as a parent. So I just want to set the record straight. Leader is all of us. And what I mean by going all in is if you look at what you're doing, is just give it 100%. I mean, for me, and you can be all in different areas. Like I'm all in. I've always been 100% in at Learnit, right? I'm going to give it my best shot. And now I'm a parent of a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. I'm all into that too, So giving your best effort, and I think that really resonates in sales as well, because sales isn't the kind of occupation, let's say, that you go in and you just kind of haphazardly say, I'm going to try sales today. I'm going to pick up the phone and dial 10, make 10 calls. Next day, not do it. You got to be committed to sales, or committed to your leadership or whatever you're doing. And if you go all in and you fail, a lot of people don't want to go all in because they don't want to fail. But even if you fail, you still have great learning opportunities that you can move for next time. So that's really what I mean about, going all in and really committing to what you're doing.
I love that. My son Smith, he's my third son. He literally just yesterday started a role. He's still in college, but he's working for a roofing company and he's selling roofs. It's probably not the easiest sales job, but what I love is he's just such a learner. Like he's been like Brad, or he calls me Bradams.
Calls you
Bradam
Brad?
Bradams. He calls me Bradams.
Yeah,
Well,
Brad Adams.
the reason for that is because whenever he would say Dad, like 5 dads would turn around and look, and
Yeah.
so then he started calling me Bradams, and I was the only dad that turned around and looked, and so he got my attention that way. But he's been watching these listening to these podcasts and watching these influencers on TikTok, and he's just like absorbing. He called me last night at 9 o'clock after he was done doing door knocks, and was just lit up like a Christmas tree, just so excited. And clearly, like, he's all in. Of course, that was day one. You should be all in on day one, right? But I love
I
that
hope so.
concept of all in. You can't, if you're trying to lead people and
Mhm.
influence people and move people and shape people, you can't dip your toe in. You've got to be 100% committed. They're going to smell it. They're going to see it. They're going to know it. If you're not authentic and engaged, it's going to be a problem. So I really like that. So one of the core principles, and I'd love to see that, I saw this in your book. One of the core principles at Sales Gravy is that we always do the right thing. And sometimes that causes me to have to go back and redo something or whatever, and it's punitive sometimes, but at the end of the day, like, doing the right thing is so important. And so when it comes to doing the right thing, why did you think, I mean, feel like this is a blinding flash of the obvious question, right? But why did you think that was so important to include in the book, and share with us some of the things or the stories around doing the right thing and why that matters for leadership?
You would think it'd be blindingly, obvious, but it's really not, to some people. And again, the first baseball coach I played for was this Hall of Fame coach named Andy Lopez, who's awesome. And Andy and I actually connected 30 years after I left Pepperdine. The year after I left, they won the World Series, go figure.
Of
And
course.
and we connected, and I met up with him in Tucson, and I gave him a copy of my book, and he kind of flipped through it. And he's like, you know what, Damon? If you recall, I had 2 rules at Pepperdine. Number one was show up on time, and number two was do the right thing. And I think that this is really important for sales. First of all, showing up on time, that has to be a no-brainer. I mean, you have to have respect for your customers and your coworkers. You always have to show up. And then the second, do the right thing. Sometimes players would say to him, well, coach, that's kind of broad. What do you mean? He's like, you know what that means. Whatever the situation is, you know the difference between right and wrong, and do the right thing. And in sales, if there's a better opportunity for your customer, you know, lead them down that path. Don't sell something that is going to be like flipping a grenade over the barracks to your customer success team. That we are over promising and underproducing. We've all seen that. Like, they're like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do this? Do the right thing. And lead with integrity. That's really where it comes into. I think it's great that that's one of the values that Sales Gravy has. I have a lot of different stories around that, and if we get around to talking about culture, I've got a great example of somebody not doing the right thing. But I just think that that's something that right off the bat, show up on time, do the right thing.
100%. Let's talk about culture. So tell me that story about culture.
There's sales culture, there's culture, and what you see sometimes, and this is something that I coach or mentor a lot of these individuals, sales leaders, and just regular leaders. And this woman, she came to me, and this is her first sales job. Really, she's been in it for about 6 months, and she's like, I got this situation. One of these, and this is a large SaaS company, and she said, and she manages a team of about 14. And she's like, one of my top producers, I think number 2 or number 3, we had this contest, this quarterly goals, and this person blatantly cheated on the contest. They
Mm,
had deals in commit that they waited to the quarter to close, and then and then after they quarter closed, they closed them out as closed lost. And they said, it's blatant that this has happened, and there's been a couple other instances where the customer success people have come to me and said, hey, so and so is, this isn't right. They said, well, what should I do? And it shouldn't matter if it's $200 or 40,000, but this is about a $40,000 situation here. And I said, well, what you should do is you should fire that person. I mean, they're not doing the right thing. This is unexcusable, especially if this isn't, like you mentioned, the first time you've caught them doing something like this. And it wasn't really her. So she turned it up to the VP of sales and explained to him, her boss, what happened. And you know what, Brad? The last I checked, about it 2 months ago, that individual was still on the sales team. And to
oof.
me, having somebody who's blatantly lying or cheating is setting the wrong example, and especially when other team members know about it. And the short-term gains aren't going to make up for, I think, the long-term effects that that's going to have on. I think culture is really important. Sales culture is really important, and going in and doing the right thing. And that's a blatant example of not doing the right thing. I think. I mean, have you seen situations like that where you just kind of turn a blind eye to a top performer who was cheating and moving on, keeping them around?
I sure have. I've seen it a lot, and it's a really challenging thing because as a sales professional, you want to sell, and as a leader of sales, you've got to lead your team to sales, and there's a metric associated with your team, and your executive team is expecting you to deliver the metric through the people in your team, and you rip out the best performing salesperson and move on. It's a terrifying thing to think about, right?
Hmm.
And so, one of the things that I always talk about is why are they doing this in the first place? Like, have you addressed this? Have you coached it? And if they didn't know, I mean, to me, right and wrong is just so black and white. My dad was
Hmm.
sounds like a lot like your dad. Just it's like there's no gray area, Brad. If you have to ask yourself if it's right, it's probably not.
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
you already knew the answer when you're asking yourself. But when you've got that ultra high performer that is producing, but is doing it in a silo and being a cancer for the team, you can't really shape anybody else because if you coach other people to do things the right way, they're going to look over and see this person X who's doing it the wrong way, and you really lose trust with your team, and so you have to put them on a rapid coaching plan to fix it because if you've not ever tried to fix it before, that's the first place you need to start. But if you've already had these conversations before, the only thing you can do is introduce them to your competitor. I mean, that's all you
Right.
can do. Just get them out, like cut the cancer out. I mean, when someone has cancer and they go to the doctor doesn't say, "Oh yeah, we'll just kind of let it grow and see what happens."
It happens.
They
Yeah.
attack it vigorously. They because it'll kill the body, right? And
Hmm.
so it'll kill a sales team, and you'll lose some of those other professionals that are earlier in their growth, but just don't want to be a part of that crappy culture. And it's a tough decision, but you got to make it anyway.
I agree, and I agree. You start with coaching, and the first thing you have to do is address it with the sales executive, you know, and and then coach through it. But if it continues, it is very difficult because you have numbers you have to hit. but it's going to erode the long-term culture of the team. And the other reps, they see that, and they see what's going on. And like you said, you can't shape the rest of the team and expect them to be do one way, and then let somebody else, cut corners and do things like that. So it's a fine line, but to me, it's if you have somebody on your sales culture who's either not making calls or just not putting any effort, it really affects your team because you want everybody kind of aligned with the same purpose and beliefs.
So you mentioned you had a 5-year-old. I imagine you've probably heard this before. You say to your 5-year-old, "Hey, you know, you've got to do this or you can't do that." And the first thing they fire back at you, well, Jimmy's dad lets him play with the iPad till 10 o'clock, and it's
Yeah.
like, and it's so maddening as a parent, but that mindset is in everybody. I mean, if people see other people doing things that they're not allowed to do, they have that FOMO, or they just completely shut down, and you're never going to get and until you get rid of that person, you're going to have a wonky culture to a bad culture. Yeah, culture is so critical, and I
It is
think that
critical.
yeah. Um, so what do you do other than doing the right thing? Like how, like
Mhm.
I've talked to your team and you've got people that have been there for a long time. Like they
Mhm.
started off as high schoolers practically, and here they are, having grandkids. I mean, they've been with you for a long time. Those are exaggerations, by the way. But obviously you've done something to create a really good culture for your team. What are some of the things that you've done?
Good question. I think what I've done is, well, I've had a lot of success getting people early on in their career, and being able, with maybe the right kind of attitude and the right kind of traits, and developing them their skills. The other thing you really want to do is you want to create a healthy competition,
Mm,
amongst the team members when it comes to sales, but you also want them to be collaborative. And so to do that is, you work with them. We also invest quite a bit in training and coaching, not just through our own Learnit classes, but other platforms like Sales Gravies and others. It's investing in your team, showing them the right direction, and also really supporting them through trial and error and mistakes and everything. And yeah, and then really what happens is, say for instance, yes, we have some individuals who stayed a really long time. We also have individuals who have stayed, 2 or 3 years and left, but they left on great terms. And what happens when you do that, Brad, is it becomes a funnel for referrals. So
mm.
people understand what the Learn It culture is like, and they know their friends or people they actually work with. And if they think they're a good fit for the Learn It culture, they'll send them our way. And that's like our number one way to recruit, is just through either existing team members or the alumni, as I call
I love that. The Learn It alumni.
them, the
You
Learn It
could
alumni.
be
You're part of it.
there you go. You can be on the sidelines, hey, 20, 20.
Yeah,
Being the
yeah.
they can be on the sidelines too. So awesome. So obviously leadership is leadership. Whether you're
Mhm.
leading an operations team, whether you're leading HR, whether you're leading accounting, but sales leadership, oftentimes I hear sales leaders say, "But you don't understand, sales leadership is different." And
Mhm.
that's definitely true, but there's a lot of core, sort of fundamentals of leadership as well. So if you take your book,
Mhm.
what would be some of the takeaways in your book that might really specifically connect to sales leaders? Because obviously that's, sales professionals and sales leaders is our primary audience.
Yeah.
What do you think if I read your book, I'm a sales leader, what are some of the core takeaways that I would get?
So I think, yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities in leading teams, whatever type of team. But I also definitely think that it is a different beast, leading a sales team for sure. I think, and if you look at my book, I talk about really four key traits to be a successful leader. One is humility, two is curiosity, three is integrity, and four is courage. Now let's look at this from a sales perspective. Humility as a sales leader, you don't need to have all the answers. It's important for your team to know that you surround yourself with great talent, and not be afraid to ask questions or even when you bring in somebody new, say, what's your prospecting cadence? Show me something, right? So you're always continuing to evolve. When it comes to curiosity, I think that this is key. We've talked about this, Brad, before. It's like asking great questions and listening. Everything kind of runs through curiosity, especially in sales. If you sit there and you can train your team on being better listeners during discovery, and not formulating an answer and cutting somebody off before, how many times, if you just let the client finish what they had to say, you might get nuggets in there that you wouldn't have heard otherwise. So always teaching your team and working your team to being curious. Having integrity, we already covered that. And also the last one is courage. Hey, it takes courage to make phone calls. It takes courage to be hung up on or to be told no. And in sales, you have to help instill resiliency in your team and courage. So I cover a lot of those 4 traits in my book, and those are really, if I think about it, where I think that sales leaders can get value out of it.
Curiosity is the one that stood out to me of those 4. Obviously, all 4 of those are critical, but I oftentimes see sales leaders. We teach the concept in our leadership program, for our sales leadership program, that you're not normal. And when you have a sales leader, you've got a sales leader that was really exceptional in sales and showed a knack for leadership, and somebody along the way said, "Hey, this person could be a really good leader," and they get moved into a leadership role. And in that leadership role, they learn a broader scope of what the company does, and what their objectives are, what their goals are, what their outcomes are, a 5-year plan, all those things. So they like see what's happening up in the stars. And then oftentimes these leaders are talking to a fairly new rep, and they're like, "What's wrong with you? Why can't you just see this? Like, why isn't it so obvious to you that like it's obvious to them?" And
Right.
that's because they're not normal. But they're not willing to apply the curiosity. They just jump
Mhm.
to conclusions. They jump to assumptions, and they think this is the wrong fit. This is a bad hire. This person's an idiot. This person, is terrified of prospecting or whatever, right? And so I'll tell you a quick story. I was actually in San Francisco, and I was working with this company, and I was working with a young lady who is an SDR.
Okay.
And, I've coached and trained 30,000 people. And this person like
Wow.
had trust me, it's all these gray hairs. I earned every one of them, right?
Yeah.
But this person had the makeup of somebody that should have been exceptional at what
Okay.
she did, but she was just really, really average. And I was trying to figure it out, and I was asking her questions. I finally pulled her in a conference room. I said, "Hey, I, like something's wrong here. I can't quite figure this out. Like what drives you? Why do you want to do this role? What makes you come to work every day?" And then she told me some BS story that wasn't true. Just whatever. She's like, all the
Right.
canned things that you hear, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I just kind of
What you're expecting to hear,
yeah,
the playbook that
yeah.
nobody gives you, but everybody knows.
Right. But then I applied curiosity,
Mhm.
and I said, "Come on." Like I dug deeper. I peeled the onion back, and she said, "Okay, but this stays between you and me." And I was like, "Okay, now we're talking, right?" And so then she said, "My husband is a software engineer." This young lady was in her 20s. Her husband was maybe a year or two older. So young, early career folks that were sort of making their stamp on the world. And she said, "He makes almost $300,000 a year. He kills it. He's so good at what he does." And I think it's great. But when we sit down and talk about the budget, if I disagree and he wants something and I want something different, he starts throwing the card out. "Well, I make a lot more money than you do, and so I get to make this decision." And in my mind, I'm like, girl, you need marriage counseling."
I
But
was just gonna say, I wonder if they're still. I wonder if they're still married, because that doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't work at my house.
that that would be tough, right? But but she said, "I want to make more money. I want to be good in sales because this is a place that I can make a lot of money, and so that I can have an equal say in the budget." And I was like, "Okay, I could work with
There
that."
we go.
So
Yeah,
I later that afternoon I walked by her, and I looked at her, and she was just talking to some friends, and she should have been making calls and booking
yeah,
appointments. And I was like, "Hey, how's that budget going for you?" And that
yeah.
she was like, "Ooh," like I saw her ferocity, and she just dug in. 30 days, Damon, 30 days, she was the number 2 person on the team.
There you go.
But if I
Yeah.
wasn't curious, like, if I didn't apply the curiosity, if I didn't, like, try to like, if I didn't just say, "Ah, I made a mistake on the hire," or whatever that might be, I would have swung and missed.
Yep.
I didn't hire her. I mean, I was just working at the company to help them. But they were ready to put her on a pit plan because 'cause they're like, "She's just not, she's been here long enough, she should be doing." But it just, like, being curious, like, curiosity is so, so critical. I love that that's part of your book, and that's something that I see almost globally, that sales leaders just flat out, like, if you think you're curious, you're probably not as curious as you should be.
Amen. I love that. I say the same kind of thing. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Let's see. I'm losing myself in my chapter 5. There you go.
Yeah.
Look for learning. Look for learning. I love that. For me, this kind of connects in two ways. This is look for learning for myself, like upskill myself, like get better as a leader myself. But also as an advocate for my team, I want to look for learning for them too. Um, why do you feel that this concept of always be on the lookout for learning? Again, feel like this is a blinding flash of the obvious, but you obviously thought it was important enough to be put in the book. Why is this concept something that you were passionate about and you wrote about?
Well, I think it's because I think you always want to be evolving. And really, Brad, everybody you come into contact with, you can learn something from them. They know more about some topic other than what you know. So there's always learning opportunities out there for you. And I think as a leader, whether you're a sales leader, well, whatever you are, you want to have that drive to continuously be learning, so you can evolve. And then you want to take that learning, because the only way you're going to hit your numbers, or your team's going to be successful, is through your team. So you get passionate, or excited about this learning, and then you turn around and you work with your team on it. So I think great leaders are great students. They're great extractors. They know how to extract information through being curious out of people, and then they share that information out, to help evolve and grow their team.
Damon, obviously you're the CEO of Learnit. I'm at Sales Gravy. We're both in the same space, although we specialize in sales. You specialize in all people in the business. But if you look at a tool like your platform, Learnit, where you provide training for corporations, and our platform, Sales Gravy, where we provide sales specific training, how might a leader think about the concept? And there's a lot of other companies out there that do what we do too. So but how would a company use additional outside resources like Learnit, Sales Gravy, and other companies that apply that? How would they best utilize that as part of their overall leadership and coaching? And what are the best practices around that?
Well, let's look at it from a sales lens. You
Okay.
see a lot of top performing sales reps getting promoted into sales leadership, and a lot of times they're dropped into this new role, Brad, without any type of coaching or training or resources, and a lot of times it doesn't end too well. So right there off the bat, when you're moving somebody into a new role, whether it's sales gravy, learning, or whatever, you have to give the individuals the skills, or the training or the skills that will get them to where they need to go. Now, I also look at it. You look at it from a sales rep perspective. It's like golf. You go out there and you have your golf swing, but if you keep the repetitions, and you keep shanking the ball or whatever, maybe you have the wrong grip or the wrong stance. That's what, just like with making outbound prospecting calls, running discovery meetings, if you go through and you learn how to do it right through coaching or through training, that's where training really can help have a positive impact on organizations. And besides that, studies show, especially with the younger generations, they're demanding that now. They're demanding professional growth opportunities and engagement scores for organizations that invest in their team. That cuts down on attrition, which costs a ton of money, and it just shows that investing in training really helps the companies increase engagement, like I just said a second ago, and keep people motivated. So there's a lot of advantage using and leveraging tools like Learn It and Sales Gravy to help invest in their team.
Awesome. Awesome. But you also have to be a good leader. Like you can't just outsource the training and then just set it and forget it. You've got to follow up and coach it and lock it in and execute. And it takes both. You need to be the leader coach, and you need to be like a rat on a Cheeto when it comes to making sure that you upskill your team. So
And how what I'd like to add to that is you can't send somebody through, like, I think my entire team has gone through the fanatical prospecting boot camp at some point or another.
sure.
That's fantastic, and it's in the cohort, and we do a lot of cohorts ourselves in leadership skills, but that's just not enough either. You have to, as a leader, you have to keep making that learning sticky, meeting with them. What did you learn? How are you implementing? Keeping them accountable for what they learned, whether it's by reading whether it's a book they're reading or a training they're going through. So yes, you're right. It's not a learning, and training isn't a set it and forget it. It's a continuous situation.
It is continuous. It's always on. You've got to be coaching every single day. And just because you create influence on somebody doesn't mean that it's locked in forever. I remember a
Absolutely.
story, again, thinking about kids. I remember a story. I was trying to teach my daughter how to make her bed every day. And I observed and I looked and I did it and she did it and she did it and she did it. And then one day I didn't look. And a few days later, she forgot to do it. And then she didn't get in trouble. And then boom, habit erased.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah, and they say sometimes you have to communicate 7 times before people even hear what you're saying. So
sure.
it's not a set it forget it. It's a constant practice, and it will pay off over time too.
Well, Damon, I tell you, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Sales Gravy podcast today. Show me the book again and tell me about where you can get the book.
There you go. I think it's behind me too, next to my Rocky poster. If you see my Rocky poster,
I do see your Rocky poster.
yeah, I love it. My
But
wife's like,
I don't want people breaking in your house to steal that copy. So where can they
yeah,
get
yeah, yeah.
it?
Yeah, my wife likes to say I had nothing to do with your designing your pictures behind you. So
Yeah.
random. You can get my book on it's the Learn It All Leader Mindset Traits and Tools. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you get books. And if you want to connect with me, please connect with me on LinkedIn at Damon Lembi, or go to the Learn It website, learnit.com, and you can see a wide variety of the offerings that how we help companies.
That's learnit.com and it's Damon Lembi, Lembi. Thank you so much. And as Damon mentioned, it's great to have tools and solutions for a leader to help upskill your sales team. And that is our entire goal at Sales Gravy and our team hub. Sales Gravy University is a perfect solution for large and scaling teams. As mentioned earlier in the podcast, we've got a great offer for the listeners of this podcast. If you've not already taken a course with us, please do so. And you could get a free course today by going to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com. Use the promo code free course. And if Damon can help you, hit him up and get that book. You're going to love it. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Hey, Brad, it was great being here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Be well.